Thank you very much, Chairman Conley and Ranking Member Heiss, for holding this important and timely hearing. The Postal Service is one of our most cherished and valuable institutions, and it's one of the few, I think it's really the only government service that is mentioned in the Constitution of the United States of America, indicating how important the Postal Service is to unifying us as a country. I have always been very proud of the fact that one stamp can go to Alaska or across the street in New York City, and it costs the same. Everyone is treated equally in it. It's a democracy, and everybody receives their mail. Our dedicated postal employees deliver to more than 160 million locations, 6 days a week. And it was one of the provisions of our bill that it went from 5 days to 6 days. It's now the law that they will be operating 6 days a week. They operate at the center of a $1.6 trillion mailing industry that employs more than 7 million people and delivers nearly half the world's mail. Postal workers truly bind our nation together, ensuring that millions of Americans have access to essential items like medicine and Social Security checks. And I might add that through the COVID crisis, all of our mail was delivered. Our employees were heroic. Many of them became sick because they were interacting with the public every day with their responsibilities, and we owe a debt of gratitude to the Postal Service and the role that they played during the COVID crisis. We were reminded just last week of the critical role the Postal Service plays as millions of Americans once again opted to vote by mail during the midterm elections. And in the coming weeks, activity at post offices and mail processing plants around the country will ramp up significantly with a wave of holiday mail and packages we'll be hearing about in this hearing. Unfortunately, we all know too well that sometimes the Postal Service performance has been slower and less reliable. And I'm concerned about operational changes in 2020 that happened without testing them first and without communicating fully with employees or customers. So I am proud that this committee has delivered for postal customers in recent years. We've delivered with strong oversight and historic bipartisan legislative reform. Earlier this year, President Biden signed the Bipartisan Postal Service Reform Act into law. The law, which I was proud to co-author with Ranking Member Comer, put the Postal Service on sound financial footing after decades of decline. The new law lowered Postal Service retiree health cost benefits and removed the burdensome retiree health care pre-funding obligation, all while preserving 6-day delivery and freeing the Postal Service to experiment with new products and services to help their financial bottom line. I do want to say and ask unanimous consent to put into the record Postal News, the U.S. Postal Service report for fiscal year 2022, and it shows that a revenue of $78.5 billion, which is up $1.5 billion over the previous fiscal year. It also showed a one-time non-cash benefit of $57 billion due to the Postal Service bipartisan reform legislation. This committee has also led the way in providing
without objection. So ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This committee has also led the way in providing the Postal Service new resources to replace old, unreliable, gas-guzzling delivery, out-of-date vehicles. At my urging, along with many members of this committee on both sides, the Postal Service will now be using billions of dollars made available in the Inflation Reduction Act to deploy a new electric vehicle fleet, and I am grateful that the Postal Service has agreed that at least half of the initial order of next-generation delivery vehicles will be electric. Now the Postal Service needs to go fully electric and build a robust charging network to support these vehicles, particularly in our rural areas. They can play an important role here. Over time, these investments will reduce costs, improve reliability, and help the Postal Service more efficiently deliver letters and packages, while also contributing to urgent efforts to cut greenhouse gas emissions. Thanks to the work of this committee, the Postal Service is in an excellent position to move past the challenges that have held it back in recent years. But I still have concerns about service quality at the Postal Service. On-time performance has rebounded from the steep decline we saw in 2020. First-class mail is once again delivered on schedule about 90% of the time. But the Postal Service achieved these gains, at least in part, by weakening its own service standards. And as Chairman Conley has noted, other troubling recent trends, like a spike in mail thefts, threatens America's trust in the mail. I want to give one, we need to look at the new 10-year plan, which proposes moving sorting and processing activities from local post offices to larger regional facilities, even though the Inspector General found that a similar plan implemented in 2010 may not have cut costs or improved operations at all. So I look forward to the IG's comments on these proposed changes on whether it will achieve its goal. It is the responsibility of the Postal Service to find ways to overcome difficulties they face and get mail delivered on time. To do this, it is critical that Postal Service leadership remember that it is not a private business, but a public service essential to our country. We all want the Postal Service to be financially viable. I understand the need for making tough choices, but offering worse service for higher prices will not increase the public's faith in the Postal Service. In fact, it might end up pushing people and businesses away from using the Postal Service. We must not allow the Postal Service to fail. We have to be there to help them in every way. It must continue providing the critical services that millions of Americans depend on. This committee is doing its part, and this hearing is an important part of that work. I look forward to today's discussion, and again, I thank Chairman Conley and Ranking Member Heiss for holding this important hearing and for their leadership on this critical service for America. I yield back to my balance of time, and I look forward very, very much to all of the panelists' testimony today. Thank you so much.
I thank